Hi, boys and girls. Welcome back. I'd like to try to summarize the last 3 or 4 lessons so we could catch up, and I would be summarizing the lessons of the week. I only have 15 minutes that the program lets me record, so let's see if I could do it. So we spoke about the situation of the Jewish people in the world, and the first piece I'd like to do is they wanted to be like everybody else. They needed a language. The Italians had a language, the French had a language, the Germans had a language, the British had a language. But our language was only used in the Torah and in prayer. Somehow it was considered a holy language, but it wasn't a language that was used every day. And the important name to remember is a man by the name of Eliezer ben Yehudah, whose name in Europe was Eliezer Perlman, who decided to speak exclusively Hebrew. And he came from a religious home. He left the house. He didn't want to be religious. And he became a tutor to a family, and he was tutoring their eldest daughter in Hebrew. And it looks like she was learning more than Hebrew from him, and they fell in love. And eventually they got married. Actually, he went to France to study medicine. And while he was studying medicine, he continued the love affair with this girl by correspondence. And he got sick. He got pneumonia. And in those days, they didn't have a cure for pneumonia. But the girl loved him, and she came to France and actually married him, even though he was sick. They went to Eretz Israel at the time, and they started speaking Hebrew. They only spoke Hebrew. Their children were the first Hebrew-speaking children. He started a kindergarten. He started a school. He is the one who made the language of prayer and Bible into a modern language. They say that his house was like a dictionary. Every place had labels on it for every new word that he made up. And he made up new words. Train, rakevet, umbrella, mitriya, and so many, many new words that he made up. So Eliezer ben Yehudah, the father of the modern Hebrew language. They were mad at him. The religious people in Israel were very mad at him because they say that he made the holy language unholy. And they wanted to kick him out of the synagogue. They didn't let him do anything there. So Eliezer ben Yehudah, the Hebrew language was Sfat Kodesh, Safa shel Torah, Safa shel Tfilah, and he is the one who made Mahapecha Lishonit, like a Jewish revolution, a Hebrew revolution. He is the one who started to use the language as an everyday language. Now let me go on and to the next slide. And the next slide brings us to the story of Tel Aviv. Tel Aviv was a new city. The city that everybody knew was Jaffa, Yafo. Okay, and Tel Aviv became the first Hebrew-speaking city, the first Hebrew city. In Jaffa, Arabs and Jews lived together. It was very crowded. It was dirty. It was the port. The ships came in and out. They took merchandise. So the city was not a pleasant place to live. And they were looking for a new neighborhood. And they left Yafo and they went to try to create Ahuzat Bait north of Yafo. And the people went out and they bought 60 lots with the help of the Keren Kayemet, the Jewish National Fund. They bought 60 lots, and they had a head of the committee was a man by the name of Mayor Dizengoff, who later on became the mayor of Tel Aviv. Here you have a picture of Jews who left Jaffa on the sand hills outside of Jaffa, north of Jaffa, and they were looking to divide up the land. You could imagine the chaos. Somebody wants near the ocean, somebody wants shade, somebody wants near a main street. 60 lots, that's all they had. Two kids who couldn't be bothered with all this nonsense with these adults arguing and trying to get different ideas went down to the water. And they came back and the meeting was still going on. What did they have in their hands? You could see on the stamp. They had seashells. The president of the group saw the seashells and they said, what a brilliant idea. We will write the numbers of the lots from 1 to 60 on the light shells and the names of each family on the dark shells, and the children will draw lots. We really don't know if this story took place or it was just a legend, but nonetheless, we have, to the 100th anniversary of the city of Tel Aviv, they created a stamp with this picture and the seashells, and you even have an old-fashioned photographer taking a picture of the people here, and they created this city. Somebody translated Benjamin Theodor Herzl's book into Hebrew. Remember, it was called The State of the Jews, der Judenstaat, and the translator called the book Tel Aviv. Tel is an ancient archaeological dig. Aviv is spring, renewal, rebirth, old rebirth. That's what he called Herzl's book. And when the city was created, when Tel Aviv was created, they called it by that name, Tel Aviv, after Herzl's book. So we have the story of the Hebrew language, we have the first Hebrew city, and now we're going to leave these two stories and move to our situation in Europe. So in Europe, there were several empires. One empire, this is Turkey today, this is called the Ottoman Empire, and right here is where Israel is located. At that time, it was called Palestine. It's a tiny piece of land. The Ottoman Empire was one of the empires of Europe. Another empire is the Russian Empire. Third is the Austro-Hungarian. Fourth, German. And finally, the United Kingdom or the British Empire. The Ottoman Empire was very poor and they needed money. And Herzl and many Jews thought, gee, a little piece of land over here to create a Jewish state in old Eretz Israel, in biblical Eretz Israel, we will pay the Ottomans who need money. They will give us a piece of land, and we won't have to live in Europe where there's so much anti-Semitism. We'll move down here. Unfortunately, the Ottomans really did not accept the money. So they did not create a Jewish state in the 1800s. It had to wait. Could you please look over here? This is a sea. It's called the Baltic Sea. This is a sea called the Black Sea. This piece of land here, I'll soon show you another picture. This was one of the places that the Jews of Europe, who were kicked out of every country, and they lived here between Russia and Poland. This was called the Pale of Settlements. The Pale of Settlements. Tchum HaMoshav. This is where the Jews lived. And the Jews were not allowed to own land anywhere else. One of the Russian rulers, Alexander II, allowed the Jews some freedom here. Unfortunately, he was killed, and they blamed the Jews, and that created many pogroms here. There was also on this side issues, because after the French Revolution, when everybody was given freedom, non-Jews had great difficulty. These Jews whom they hated until now, all of a sudden have freedom and equality with everybody else. So they had great difficulty with the Jews. Problems here, problems there. Comes along a man by the name of Theodor Herzl, and he says, there is no hope for the Jews anywhere in Europe. We have to create our own country. I'm going to stop the tape here because I'm running out of time, and I'll resume immediately with the story of Herzl and Dreyfus, and you will be able to continue from there in tape number